I wish I could say I was afraid, but I wasn't. Quite the contrary. This was by far the most interesting thing that had ever happened to me in my entire life. And that's her reaction to finding a dead body in her backyard. Welcome to my January wrap-up. I have watched so many of these before, and I'm really excited to get to do one myself. In the month of January, I read 10 books and 4 short stories. Most of them, the vast majority of them, are horror, extreme horror, or something along those lines. I did listen to the audio version of Pride and Prejudice. We won't spend a lot of time on that, that's not what you're here for, but that is a thing that happened. And I will say I did enjoy it. I like to listen to audiobooks before I go to bed, but I don't want to listen to something that's going to give me nightmares. So I do like something that's a little bit more lighthearted for that time. So I did mention I read 4 short stories. They all came from this book of H.P. Lovecraft. I do have a whole video that's going into detail about the 4 stories I read, so I'm not going to do that here. But I will just mention that I read The Call of Cthulhu, I read The Dunwich Horror, The Color Out of Space, and The Shadow over Innsmouth. One clear winner there that I strongly preferred over the others. But like I said, there's another video on that, so if you want to hear about that, you can go watch that video. So those are the 4 short stories. I haven't read the other ones from this book yet though. As far as the whole solid books, this is called The Sweetness at the Bottom of the Pie by Alan Bradley. This is a library book that I just sort of randomly stumbled across and I thought it sounded interesting. And apparently it's also, it says here, winner of the Crime Writers Association Debut Dagger Award. So maybe it's more well known than I realized. I wasn't familiar with it, but the plot is that there's this 11-year-old girl named Flavia. She's really into chemistry and she's really smart for her age. And so when she finds a dead body on her property, she's determined to try to figure out the case. I haven't watched the new series Wednesday. It reminds me of Wednesday Addams from like the Christina Ricci version from when I was like younger. So it's kind of like that vibe where she's a young girl, but she's also trying to poison her sister, but she's not evil. It's just all kind of tongue-in-cheek. I did find this book to be a little slow in the middle, but then it picked up and I was really glad that I stuck with it because I did end up enjoying it quite a lot. So just sort of like a random older book that I stumbled upon. Okay, so The Silent Patient by Alex Michaelides? You've probably seen this book. If you're in any sort of bookstore or even just like a Walmart or a Target or whatever, I saw this book everywhere. There's this therapist who finds out that there's this woman who murdered her husband, and then after she murdered him, she stopped speaking and now she's in a mental institution. And as a therapist, he's determined that he wants to try to help her to get her talking. I read this in one sitting, which is very unusual for me. I very rarely will read a book in one sitting unless it's rather short, which this is not. That being said, I don't remember this very well. It didn't really stick with me. This is the type of book, in my opinion, that you really enjoy it while you're reading it, but it's not the type of book that you're going to think about 3 years from now. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't really stick with you. It's just sort of a fun adventure. There are a few plot holes and things like that, but if you're just looking at it from the perspective of enjoyment and entertainment, it definitely fits the bill there. But yeah, just for me, it was just sort of average. Another one that I read is Nestlings by Nat Cassidy. I wanted to read this specifically because I loved his book, Mary. I read that last year and I absolutely loved it. That was a 5-star for me. So of course I was very excited to read this. It's described as sort of a mixture between Rosemary's Baby and Salem's Lot. I have not read Salem's Lot, but I know it has something to do with vampires. And Rosemary's Baby is probably my favorite horror movie that I've ever seen. Between that and loving his first book, I was very excited to read it. I very much enjoyed this. There's this couple, the woman had a baby. Like when she gave birth, she had complications, and as a result, she was left in a wheelchair. So you have this couple who end up moving into this more expensive apartment, but there's all these complications between their relationship with each other, plus their daughter starts acting kind of peculiar. The vibes are off. It had the horror elements, but it also has a lot of like interpersonal relationships and a lot of that sort of stuff too. I really enjoyed it. I can't say I liked it as much as Mary, but I really enjoyed it. And one of the other things about this is that this is Nat Cassidy's second book, and it's so rare for me to, I'm always behind with these things. I'm always behind the times. And so for me to find an author that I just really, really like, and he's kind of new on the scene of major publications, it's really exciting to me that I can kind of like follow his journey and keep an eye out for anything that he publishes, because I'm definitely a big fan of his work from what I've read so far. So I would recommend this very much. Okay, so we have one more kind of cutesy one, and then we're going to get into the extreme horror. So this one is called Chapter and Curse. This is just one of those sorts of cozy mystery type books. This girl and her mother, they end up moving to Britain from the States because her aunt owns a bookshop and she really needs help to kind of bring it into the modern day. Like, she's very behind the times, but it's a very historical bookstore. So she just moves there with her mother. There's a murder, but this like random woman's gonna solve it. You know the type, like if Hallmark did Halloween, that sort of thing. So if you like sort of cute mystery things like this that aren't really that deep and they're just like a light, easy reading sometimes, you know, that they're kind of all the same. This was just as good as any other book like this. And plus, if you like books and you like reading, then it's fun to have that setting of the bookstore and all of that. So, yeah, I thought this was cute. I liked it. Okay, now we're getting into the extreme horror. The Slob by Aron Beauregard? Yeah, Aron Beauregard. This woman, she's married to this man. He's in a wheelchair. And she's like, okay, I am pregnant. I need to make more money. She goes door to door selling vacuums. Goes to the wrong door and gets absolutely wrecked. Let's just be real. She just gets wrecked. So this has, it's not a big book. It takes a little bit to get to the gore and stuff, but when we're on the halfway point through the end, the second half of the book, it is very gory. It's very like, ugh. I think of all the ones I read, this one was the most, it had the scene that made me feel the ickiest. You know, so if you want to feel icky, and sometimes I do, you know, might recommend that. This one actually has a sequel too that I've been kind of curious to try. I don't have it yet, but I've been kind of thinking about it. Talia by Daniel J. Volpe, another extreme horror book. So this is about a woman who she thinks she's going to move to New York, or New York? I'm pretty sure it's New York. So she's going to move to New York and she's going to be an actress, and in a shocking turn of events, she's not suddenly an actress. She ends up doing adult content. So this book becomes very much into not just that she gets into adult content, but she gets into the most depraved versions of those things. This one has a lot of sexual content in it, obviously. There's a lot of gore, though, pretty consistently throughout the book. And it does have like a bit of a, like a, I don't want to say a twist, but like a surprise. It kind of goes in a direction you might not expect. So I like this one. I like this one too, and I would read this author again as well. This one is another extreme horror book that I read that I did not talk about in that video, called His Pain. And this is by Wraith James White. I really want to do a video where I do more of a deep dive into this and maybe other books from him or something. Out of the extreme horror that I read this month, this one ended up being my favorite. This is about a dude named Jason. And Jason has a medical condition that causes him to just be extremely sensitive to everything, to noises, to physical sensations. Everything is painful to him. It's painful to him to hear people speaking. It's painful to him to have people hug him or touch him. Everything is pain. And that's his entire life since he's been born. And so throughout this book, his family who loves him, his parents love him and want him to not experience life this way. They get this man who believes he can help him not eliminate his pain, can teach him how to live with his pain and how to kind of combine those elements of pleasure with pain and how to exist, bringing those worlds together. So this book I thought was so good. It was my favorite of all the extreme horror that I read. It had moments of humor. I don't always know when something's supposed to be funny just because I find it funny, but there was 2 parts in this that made me laugh. But the second one I told my husband about, and he did not laugh. He looked disturbed, so maybe it's just me. I don't know. This one to me has a lot more depth to it than just like a gore fest. Like the idea of that you can't eliminate your pain, but you can learn to live with it and you can learn to harness it and kind of use it to your benefit. I think that there's a lot of layers to that can be explored. And I really want to read more from this author because I really did enjoy this one. So I would recommend this one if you are interested in extreme horror. Second to last one. So this one I am not going to go into detail about because I will be talking about it in a future video coming up soon. But I will just say that I did read Reconstructing a Relationship by Micah. There's a woman and a man that are together. He dies in a car accident and she can't bear the thought of being without him. So she's kind of trying to reconstruct his body to bring him back to life. It's kind of, if you've ever seen the movie May, which is a good movie if you haven't, it kind of has like that sort of vibe to it at first. There is a bit of a twist, very mixed feelings about it. So there's that. And last but not least, we have Carrie by Stephen King. I did mention this in my Stephen King video, and so I will just, I won't drone on long about it. I'll just say that despite everything about this, it is one of his most famous works. It's just iconic, frankly. I don't know how to explain to you why. I didn't care for it. I did not enjoy reading it. It was a huge slog for me, and it shouldn't have been. On paper, this is the sort of book that I would like. I don't know. And on that note, so that was my January. But I also said that I plan to read a Stephen King book, at least one a month for the rest of the year. So I have my little sushi pencil case, and I wrote down the Stephen King books that I knew I wanted to read during the year, and I put them in here. So we're gonna make sure. Okay, so hopefully you can see. Grab only one. Okay, so we are reading, I am reading Liz, I don't know if it's Lizzie or Lizzie. Lizzie, see, I feel like it should be Lizzie, but why is it spelled that way? We're gonna go with Lizzie. That will be my February Stephen King book for the month. Yay, this was so fun. Like I said before, I've watched so many of these, and to actually get to do my own is like so exciting to me. If you are still here, thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. And maybe I'll see you the next time around. Bye. Side note, 5 stars is just not enough stars for me to accurately rate these things, because I got way too many things that are all 3 stars that are not the same as each other. I'm just saying. The plot of this one is kind of hard for me to tell you off the top of my head, even though I just read it earlier this month. I brought this to work with me to read on my break, and it didn't occur to me until I was reading it how incredibly inappropriate that was. So don't make that mistake. Not safe for work. Don't bring that to work.